at our monthly live with Jennifer from the Raw Fed Feline. So every month we go live and talk about an element of raw food, raw feeding, raw fed cats. And tonight we are talking about looking in the litter tray, which I have to say, the conversations about poop, they're kind of my favorite ones. And when I'm working with clients, they'll say to me something, they'll like hint about, the outgoings or whatever of the cat. I'm like, let's just use the word, right? It's poop. Like, let's just say it, because let's not get embarrassed or the business or anything like that. Let's just call it what it is. Yep. We're talking about poop tonight.
Yes. Poop and pee, right? We'll talk about both. That's right.
Indeed. So how are you today, Jennifer? Let's check in with you before we get started.
I am great. And I weirdly love cleaning the litter tray and love talking about poop. So I'm thoroughly excited about today's live. This is great.
Brilliant. I have to say, I am right there with you. So let's see. Is anybody online with us that is a litter box lover? As in somebody who, you like to check what's going on in there. You like to keep a look at what's there. I have to say, it's a very sad in my house right now, because both of my boys go outside and that's great in some ways. But for me, it presents a bit of a challenge because I can't monitor, and I know we'll come on to that towards the end. So that's why I think I'm also particularly quite excited to talk about wee and poo today, because I haven't seen any for a very long time from my boys.
You've been robbed of that experience. It's terrible. You need to talk to your boys. Say, just come on, be a little present in here.
In the litter tray. Let's be clear where we're manifesting that. Give me something in the litter tray.
In the tray.
No random poops anywhere else. Thank you very much.
Yes, absolutely.
So why is it important for us to look at the litter tray for our cats?
Well, right. I think we spend a lot of time paying attention to what we're putting in, right? Like what food and do they like it? And, how healthy is it? And all these things. But to me, then looking at what's coming out the other end, what's coming in the litter box, the waste products, the pee and the poop from the food, I mean, that is a really nice indicator to us of like, oh, this is agreeing with my cat. Like this is working for them, because your cat, isn't, maybe they will talk to you, Julianne, but for most of us, we have to like look at their behaviors, right? And we have to, be able to see what's going on. And so to me, being able to check the pee and the poop, it's sort of a sneak peek into like what's going on inside your cat's body. Are all systems go? Is this working well? And cats are notorious for hiding illness. And so a lot of times we can, catch things like that in the litter box before there are other symptoms that we might see too. Yeah. So I feel like there's a lot of important reasons to be keep on top of the litter box for sure.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think it can be, if you're able to view it for your cat, it can be the first sign, like you said, that there is an issue, whether that's the food, signs of a health problem, and I'll never forget when we first had Leo and he used his litter tray. And my husband, he gagged when he was sifting it through and sorting it out. And we just, 6 months before, we had Pickle, who was part raw fed, part wet food. She didn't really have, she had a lot of constipation issues anyway. So we very rarely had any kind of smell or scent. And I remember him just retching almost and gagging on the smell of what had come out from Leo.
Leo could clear the flat.
And he said to me, I think there's something wrong with the cat. I said, no. I said, well, actually, I said two things. One, he might be stressed because he'd been with us for 24 hours or so. I said, so yes, it could be that. I said, then, let's have a look at the kind of the texture and consistency of it. And it looked like, I wouldn't say what is normal, but it looked like a well-formed poo, let's put it that way. So I said, well, unfortunately, I think it is, a sign of what he's eating. And actually they were consistently like that until we brought in raw food.
Yeah.
Do you see Hazel's?
Oh,
Does she have a litter tray?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. And, Hazel lives with two other cats. And so if I want to know what's going on with individual cats, I will sort of stalk like who's going to the box, and now I'm gonna go stalk and I like I know my daughters think I'm insane, but you know, watching how your cat goes to the bathroom too, right? Like,
Mm.
are they straining? Is everything kind of coming out nice? Are they starting and stopping? Like, what's happening in that way too, can also be important. So I pretty routinely stalk, like, oh, Hazel's going to the box. Let me see if she's gonna go poop, and I will watch her and make sure everything looks good periodically, just to kind of keep tabs on it. Because when you have multiple cats in the house, you don't always know, like, all right, whose poop is this? What's going on?
No.
And so if you want to know for individual cats, I know sometimes people will put like a camera set up, which is like way more high tech than I can do, but I will
Oh,
just
wow.
stalk so I can see individually what's happening there.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
it can be a challenge with multi-cat homes,
Yeah.
you know, being able to, you know, you find a poop, you find a wee, it's great, but you don't know who it belongs
Yeah.
to. And particularly if there are medical concerns, you
Mhm.
need to ensure you're getting the sample, whichever it may be, from
Yeah.
the right cat. So
Yeah.
like you said, there are options there to watch them, to kind of, you know, surreptitiously I can never say this word.
Surreptitiously,
See?
something like that. It was close.
Surreptitiously. So, yeah,
Yes, that sounds good.
undercover, you can be a ninja
Yes.
and watch them. Like you said, there are cameras, and also there is, you know, another opportunity is if you have a cat that is okay with being enclosed in a room, you can put a litter
Mhm.
tray in a room. If I did that with Leo, he would freak out. He wouldn't use the litter tray.
Mhm.
Whereas with baby Max, he was being brought up in a very, very large room, but in a room. So if
Yeah.
I had signs that he was unwell, I know that I could put him in a room, shut a litter
Mhm.
tray, shut him
And
in there
he'd
with a litter
use it.
tray,
Mhm.
and we'd be able to get a sample. But it can be a concern if you've got
Yeah.
multiple cats. What is with my words tonight? To be able
It's
to
late for you.
manage what's coming out of who, you know, because
Yes,
that's
exactly.
key, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. So that can be really tricky when you've got multiple cats going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
And also
sure.
different boxes as well. So you can't always rely on the fact that, or for example, like Leo always used the downstairs one and Max always used the upstairs one.
Mhm.
That might be their kind of version of traditional, but
Right.
actually you have no guarantees. And if we're talking about medical problems, you may find your cat will use a different box because where they go and
Mhm.
it's familiar, if it's caused them pain or discomfort, they're going
Yeah.
to go somewhere else. So
Yeah.
again, it's really, you need to be able to watch and see what's coming out.
Yeah.
Like you said,
Yeah.
there's no other way to sugarcoat it, really.
Yeah. No, you really do. I mean, I think this is one of the challenges for cat guardians than dogs, right? Because you take your dog out on the walk, you stand there and wait for them to poop, and you're picking it up in a baggie, right? Like you're seeing all the time your dog's poop and pee. Whereas with cats, you know, they're a little more discreet in their box, and they don't always want an audience and these things. And so it does make it I don't know, it's just a challenge, I think, with cats in a different way than dogs.
Yeah, oh for sure. If I could go out and get a bag and just scoop baby Max and Leo's poop up, I'd be so happy.
That'd be so easy. You'd be like, "Oh, sweet."
Oh
Oh, too
god.
funny, too funny.
So tell us. Yeah, I've just got visions of myself with like your poo bag inside out going, I mean, oh baby Max, that's great, you know.
Yeah. Going on a poo
Um
hunt.
you joke when we had Pickle, oh god bless her, when she, you know, she had a lot of problems with constipation. That's why we
Mhm.
were never actually fully raw with her. I didn't know back then what I know now about how to
Yeah.
support her. So we actually gave her a mixture of wet and raw. And we used to play a game called Hunt the Nugget. We would look around the house and be like, where is the poop? You know,
Yeah.
where is Blester? Where has she managed to pop a nugget out?
Yeah.
And it was, you know, it was heartbreaking in a way, but
Yeah.
it was also bizarrely reassuring to find it, you know, so that we could inspect
Mhm.
it, because it can tell you a lot, right? So
Yeah.
talk a bit about what it can tell us, like what it can show us when we're looking at poop.
Sure. I mean, to me, some of the important things to pay attention is like the consistency of the poop, right? I mean,
Mhm.
a healthy poop, it should be nicely formed, right? It's kind of like a Tootsie Roll candy. Do you guys have Tootsie Rolls in
I
the
don't know
UK?
what that is. No.
Okay. I don't even really know what it is either. One of those candies that's like, I don't know what this is made of, but
Huh.
any US viewers will know what a Tootsie Roll is, but
Google it. Okay.
right, but it should be it
Oh,
can be segmented, right? But it should have form. I mean, it shouldn't be mushy, squishy. It should have a certain amount of form.
okay.
And for a raw fed cat, there really actually shouldn't be that much, right? Like raw fed
Yes.
cats poop very little as compared to a kibble fed cat, especially, but even a cat that's eating a canned food diet, because there just isn't the same fillers, carbs, the extras that can be in, dry and canned food sometimes, where that's just waste. The cat really can't make use of that. So all that has to come out in the poop. So like a kibble fed cat, they have like big poops and much more frequently than a raw fed cat, where their body is able to utilize so much of the food that their poops are pretty small and much less frequent. And so a lot of times when people make that transition with their cat from eating kibble to eating raw, they panic and they think, oh my gosh, my cat's constipated on raw. It's like, oh, wait a minute, let's double check, because most of the time they're really not. It's just that they're used to scooping poop every day or twice a day, right? Whereas with so Hazel, she usually goes every other day. Sometimes it'll push to the morning of the third day, but usually it's kind of like an every other day. The other two cats in the house are pretty much on that same schedule too. And funnily enough, they're all three on the same day. So I'll have like one day where it's like poop from everybody, and then like a day and a half with no poop and just pee. I'm like, all right, everybody's on the same schedule.
That's so funny.
It's so weird. But some raw fed cats, I mean, they'll go 3-4 days in between poos because their body's just utilizing it. There's no waste, minimal waste. And they're not really constipated at all. That's just how it's supposed to be. And I feel like if you think about a cat in the wild, they're prey and predator, but like a prey animal is not going to leave big piles of poop everywhere and announce to predators, here I am, right? So like it's really quite adaptable in terms of survival, that their poop, a raw fed cat's poop, doesn't have much smell at all. And it's very a small amount and infrequently, and that's a lot safer for an animal that is prey.
I agree. Yeah. And also to go with that, the texture and consistency of it, like you said about it not being too sort of wet or too moist, with raw fed cats, it's almost like crumbly. It's almost like it can be quite sort of chalky, quite light. It doesn't, like you said, it doesn't smell very much. So, when they're outside, if they were feral, for example, they're not leaving smelly piles wherever they go, where they can be kind of like tracked and, identified.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and raw fed and poop can change color, right? Like we associate poop with being brown, but it can change color depending on the meats that you're feeding. So like if your cat is having like a lot of chicken or turkey for a while, their poop might be a much lighter shade of brown, as opposed to if they're eating red meats, it could be darker. The bone content of the food will also change, the poop, and the bone content can change the consistency as well as the color. So it can be whiter with poop, but it can, like you said, kind of get chalky or crumbly. And that can sometimes indicate, right? It can sometimes be an indication to the raw fed or the raw feeder of like, maybe I need to reduce my bone content a little, or, balance that out a little bit with either less bone or feed a boneless option next, just to kind of create a little bit of balance. But conversely, if it's way, way, way too dark, that can mean you have too much organ content. And it's like, okay, now you need more bone, less organ. So it's monitoring that poop can really help how do I need to tweak the diet to, best benefit my cat. And that can be really helpful too.
I love that. That's really fascinating that literally looking at the color and the consistency and the texture of the poo can help you to sort of inform you, where am I going with the diet in the next 24, 48 hours? What's the next type of meal we're going to do?
Yeah, for sure.
Fascinating. So do you do that with Hazel? Do you manage and monitor her diet according to kind of how things are going the other end?
Yeah, because Hazel, she can tend towards constipation a little bit more. She doesn't do well with like a traditional 10% bone content that a lot of commercial raw foods have. She really does a lot better, kind of in that 6-7% range. But if I've fed her a meal that has a higher bone content, I will almost always give her like an eggshell based raw next, just to kind of keep things balanced out, because that's just, I guess I just learned that about her over time, that's,
Mm,
if her poop's gonna go one way or another, she'll lean towards constipation,
mhm,
if that
mhm.
bone content is too high. So I do pay attention. That's mainly why I stalk her, because I want to see if she's straining at all, of like, everything coming out here okay, and making sure she's good in that way.
Mm. And why do you switch to a calcium? Why do you switch to the egg shell? Why do you put the egg in the next meal instead?
It's in because it has lower phosphorus, and a lot of
Right.
times that will bring things down in a nice way.
Mm,
It provides calcium but lowers the phosphorus that the bone has.
I
Um,
see. Okay. Interesting. Okay, so all I have in my head is like you going looking around the corner,
oh
peering
yeah,
at Hazel while she's on the train.
oh yeah, and she does not appreciate it. Quite honestly, she'll give me a bit of a glare of like, seriously, you're in here again with
I
me.
was gonna say that they're from a behavioral perspective. That's why I mentioned about, being a ninja, because there is like if it was Leo, like he would just step out. Like
Yeah,
if he
he would
sees
be like, I'm
Leo
out.
anywhere within the vicinity of managing, monitoring, or watching, he'd be like I'm done.
No,
I'll come
Hazel
back
will
later.
tolerate it, but she'll give me a glare that lets me know,
For sure.
like, I would rather do this in private. Thank you. So,
Yeah. So that's a point to note, peeps. Hi, Heidi. That's a point to note that if you want to check your cat, or you need to, for whatever reason, keep an eye on the litter tray, just be, mindful of what type of cat are they? Are they quite laid
Mhm.
back, chilled out? Are they a bit more sensitive around the litter box? Maybe like Jennifer said at the beginning, a camera is a good option, something facing the litter tray, not, on the litter tray, but, so you can see what's going on, a good camera angle. There are
Yeah.
different options depending on, because as we know, every cat is an individual. So what works for one may not work for another. There is no hard and fast rule. But if you
Mhm.
need to manage or monitor them with a litter tray, have a think about the best way to do that, that gives them
Mhm.
the support that they need, as Jennifer said, to have that privacy. Because cats are predator and prey, so they're not used to being out and about. They're not like deer who just like walk along, and if they've got to poop, they've got to poop. It just comes out and they're still grazing, right? Like it doesn't matter. I say that example because we have deer at the back, and I will
Yeah,
be
yeah,
looking at the trees or feeding the carrots or something, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, that one's pooping, quick turn
yeah,
away. you know Whereas cats aren't like that.
yeah. No, they do. They're more private animals, I think. Yes,
Yeah.
sure.
So, what else is there about poop before we go on to we? Is there anything else about poop that you'd want to share or talk about?
Well, right. So monitoring frequency, um, monitoring sort of the consistency, and then paying attention to color, right? But
Hmm.
I think there are a couple things that are can be more alarming when you see the poop, that you'd
Hmm.
kind of want to be aware of too. I mean, obviously diarrhea is never fun, and there's sort of like soft poop diarrhea where it's right, it's got no consistency, is very very mushy. That oftentimes is related to like food changes. Kind of somebody went too fast as they introduced something
Mm,
new, and now you've got like mushy poo.
mm,
And that usually can resolve, right, with either some Espulardi or slowing that transition down, or, just with time, really, a couple days to get
mm,
the system back on track. But if you've got
mm,
like watery diarrhea, that's typically a pretty serious sign in terms of parasites.
mm.
And especially if we're talking seniors or kittens, that's really kind of a vet visit pretty quickly, because they can dehydrate and that can get serious
Yes,
fast. So
yes.
watery diarrhea is nothing you really want to see in your box. I mentioned sometimes if you're feeding too much organ content, the stool can be really dark. But if it's like black, dark, and kind of
Yeah.
tarry, that can be an indication of kind of some old blood in the system. And that's never a good sign. So that
Ooh.
was definitely a like, let's get to the vet.
Mm.
Sometimes bright red blood isn't always as scary as it seems. If it's like a
Agreed.
little bit of blood, that can mean maybe that, oh, maybe there is some constipation going on and they sort of strained and there can be some like anal tearing there. And if it's a small amount, that's like, okay, don't panic. See what you can do to sort of address constipation. But if we're talking like a lot of bright red blood, that's get to the vet, right? I mean, to me,
absolutely, yeah.
right?
It's like looking at how much is there of this stuff, right? You know, with blood, if it's a little bit on, which we've had a pickle, a little bit of blood on the outside of the poop, keep an eye on things like you said. Are they straining? What's going on? You know, if it's, you know, like a teaspoon, something's popped or torn, you know, we need to get it checked out. I mean, if and obviously anybody watching this live with us now or on the replay, if you are concerned about your cat, go and see your vet. You know, that Jennifer and I, we are not vets, we are professionals, but not in the veterinary world. So if you have any concerns about your cat in terms of what's coming out into the litter tray, how they, you know, please always get a vet check first. So just to kind of put that caveat there. But like I said, the blood, it may not always be that scary. It depends what it looks like, how much you've got as well, right?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. The other thing people will sometimes notice is kind of like mucusy, like kind of a mucusy layer on the poop.
Coatings,
yeah. And sometimes that can be part of like the detoxification process of like you're making this switch from maybe a more highly processed diet to a fresher food diet. And so there can be some mucus there. But if it's anything that lasts a long time, again, like when in doubt, see the vet, you know, because sometimes it's related to food, what's going on with the poop, but especially if you have a kitten or a cat maybe who has like pica or pica where they are eating things that they shouldn't. Sometimes it can be about foreign body or they ate something like they really, really shouldn't have and their body's responding. So, and again, this is why it's such a good idea to pay attention to poop because those are all things that the poop can tell you as the cat parent that your cat's not going to be able to necessarily communicate to you in another way. So got to pay attention to the poop.
You do. It's all about the poop. I mean, I think when it comes to changes in diet, think about us as humans. You know, if we go from eating, and not that I would eat this myself, but McDonald's or fast food takeaways to then suddenly having like green juices or like, you know, salad for every meal, your body needs time to adjust, and you know, you're going to have a bit of perhaps a change in your outgoings, and also, you know, like you said about the mucus layer, I think that's a really good point because, you know, the gut biome has to adjust. The flora, I don't know the right term, so forgive me, but I'm going to just use the general phrase of gut biome. And the bacteria in the intestines and everything, you know, it's not just the tummy and then you get a poop. You know, you've got all of the intestines, and that's all got, you know, gorgeous bacteria in there. But you may have an overgrowth if you are feeding, you know, dry food, kibble-based diets that unfortunately themselves are covered in bacteria, but also the way that produces in the, you know, what the reaction is in the body when you give the cat that load of carbs. So there's a chance to find a balance. You know, the body is adjusting, like you mentioned at the beginning, Jennifer, you know, the nutrients that are taken out of the food are so much higher, and all those nutrients are going to nourish the whole of the body. So it's really a species appropriate diet. It is the opportunity to nourish every part and every process in the body, and the poop that comes out the end is literally the end of all of that cycle. So it gives us a really good indication as to how is the cat adjusting, how is their physical body adapting. So we know when it comes to transition, you've got, you know, the behavioral element, you know, the emotional element for the cat as well. You know, there are other things to consider, but when we're looking at the litter tray, if you're making changes to your diet, peeps, you know, like Jennifer said, pay attention, look at what's going on. You know, when we talked about transition, which if you haven't seen the replay, you can catch it on the YouTube channel. We talked about doing it really slow, you know, and one of the reasons for that was to give the physical body the opportunity to adjust, you know, and we're going to come on to in just a minute, but that's just as important, you know, giving your cat a different anything in terms of intake. It needs time. It needs time for the body to figure out what's going on, to reassess the insulin and the chemicals that are going around the body as a result of a change of diet. So you know, bear that in mind when you're making those changes.
Yeah.
So let's go. How is it 1:30 already? So let's go onto urine, onto wheeze.
Yes.
So, I know a lot of people worry their cat doesn't drink enough, and actually we did a live about water with Raw Pet Medics last Friday. So again, peeps, if you haven't seen that, head to the Raw Pet Medics page, and under the replays, you'll see the live that we did about water with cats. And I have to say, like, I am heightened about water for my boys, because with Pickle, because we dealt with such terrible constipation with her, it's something I am mindful of and very aware of. But again, I don't get to see how many times they wee. All I know is that baby Max likes a covered litter tray, and his wheeze used to be teeny tiny. That's all I know about wheeze with my boys.
Right. Well, it's funny you bring up about, drinking, because, I have a dish of water out, obviously, for the cats, but they literally never drink from it. Like, ever. It just collects dust. I continue to clean it and put fresh water in it, but really nobody drinks out of it. But if they did, I would know something was amiss, quite honestly.
That's the difference, right? So that's what we come back to, knowing your own cat. So if you saw one of yours drinking, you'd be like, ding, 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 alarm bells, something's not right there.
Something's not right.
So I agree with you. It's important to have it, whether you've got indoor or outdoor cats. My two are outdoor, but we have two water bowls in the house. Sure. I very rarely see Leo drink from it, if at all. Baby Max, we are weaning him off when he's come in, little bits to eat. So randomly, occasionally, I will see him drink, but it's never very long. And again, if he is there, I'm like, something's not right, So it's a great option to have it. Yeah. But looking at your diet, there is moisture in their diet if they are wet or raw fed, right?
Yeah. And that's really how cats are designed to get their water, right? It's in their food, through their food. They're just not even physiologically designed to drink very efficiently. They're not very good at it, quite honestly. And some cats, enjoy water and like playing in water, so not to, if you have a cat who likes water and they are drinking water sometimes, like, I'm not saying be alarmed by that, right? Like, 'cause some cats drink water more than others, but, like you said, Julianne, you have to know your cat, but if you're feeding a moisture-rich diet of any kind, right, whether it's canned or you make homemade cooked food or raw, any of the raw food, they probably aren't drinking all that much. And that's normal when they're eating a moisture-rich diet. But what you should see in the litter box, though, right? So when you have a raw fed cat, especially, poop is very minimal, doesn't happen every day. But pee, that should be happening multiple times a day, and some pretty nice size litter clumps, right? If you use the clumping litter, they should be pretty nice size. And again, you want to kind of know your cat, but definitely there's a lot more urine should be in that box than poop, for sure.
Yeah. And what are your thoughts on it being on the smell?
I mean, cat pee smells. I mean, I feel like poop doesn't really smell that much. Cats are known for their pee, because to me, like, as a prey animal in the wild, right, we don't want that poop attracting predators to come and get me. So, but pee is used for lots of things, right? It's like marking territory. It's claiming like, hey, this is me, I live here, or, I'm the tomcat on the block, and this is my domain. So urine is used for a lot of different things, but I think cat pee always does have a smell. But I think if your cat is dehydrated, they're not eating that moisture-rich diet, it's going to be even more concentrated, right? The urine is more concentrated, the smell is more concentrated, and because the amount that's coming out is just so much less. And so, with a cat who's really well hydrated, you get a lot more urine. It doesn't smell as strong, as pungently, I think, as pee of a dehydrated cat. And it should be a lot more frequently.
Yeah. I'd also add to that as well that when a cat is marking, when they're using it for the spraying purposes, there's a lot more hormones and pheromones in there. So it does generally smell different. So I've been in places where, cats are spraying, it stinks.
It's stinky.
It really stinks. Yet when I've gone to the litter tray previously, previous cats or Leo and baby Max, doesn't really smell of anything, So there is a chemical change in whether they're spraying or whether they're urinating,
You're,
again,
yeah,
sort of cooking
actually
down,
peeing.
tail up or back, whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
Because like you said, the way that they're using that urine is to mark territory. It is to say, like, I am here. I am, for whatever behavioral or emotional response that is connected to.
Yeah.
So if you've, again, knowing your own cat, right? If I was scooping the litter tray, like with Pickle, let's use that as an example because that's what I was actually doing. Her wee very, it didn't smell. The only other time, and when it was in the litter tray, let me rephrase that, it didn't smell when it was in the litter tray. The only time we found that it was smelly was when she, bless her little heart, she'd obviously been constipated. She dealt with that. It was in the corner of the front room. That was all over the wall. And there was urine there as well. So obviously, bless her, her body was struggling to have the mechanics of everything be as it should. So, when you think about the impact on the body, it's not, that wasn't a normal output for her, which it was interesting as to why it would, the urine particularly was smelly. So
yeah. Well, and like you said, it really does come down to knowing your cat, because knowing how frequently your cat, right? So I feel like I need to add a caveat in a way. Like, a well-hydrated cat will pee more often and a greater amount than a dehydrated cat. But there's like too much, right? And that can indicate diabetes or some other kidney issue, or right. So it really is kind of knowing your cat's new normal as a raw fed cat, perhaps, right? If you've made that shift. But just in terms of a moisture diet in general, like, pay attention, right? So this is my cat's normal. This is how often they poo. This is how often they pee. This is what this kind of looks like. So that when it changes, too much, too little, smells different, or especially if they're not actually putting it in the litter box, right? These are all things that can let you know, I need to pay attention and figure out what's happening here from my cat. Because it can be a health issue or behavioral problem.
Absolutely. And I think there's one other caveat as well to put to that, which is age. So like we had baby Max from 3 and 3.5 months old, for October, November, December, January, February, 5 months old. And he would obviously urinate more, pee and poop more then than he does now. Obviously, like, I don't see it now, but before he went, he's almost just over 2. So peeps, if you've got a cat, think about if you are making changes to their diet, the age of them as well. And like Jennifer said, it's all about getting to know your cat. So whether you've had your cat at 4 years old or 10 years old, it doesn't matter. What is their normal? And again, if you're getting them from the rescue center, great question to ask. It's not something to be afraid of or embarrassed about, because if they've been in the rescue center for more than a couple of days, they should be able to give you a bit of an idea, like, how often do you do the litter trays? Because the rescue center will do it, I don't know, once a day or whatever. Ask them if there's an opportunity to figure out what is this cat's normal, and I appreciate that obviously a rescue center, rescue scenario isn't a traditional setup and situation, but you can start to get to build a picture of what works for this cat. And then when you get them home, if you decide to change their diet, it's all about building those blocks of information. So excuse me, I'm a lover of a book. I write down what the boys eat. I write down if they have medication. I write down if they have any supplements. Everything gets written down. So I've got the data. And whether you are someone like me who likes to use a book or not, it's entirely up to you guys. But it is helpful to know what is your cat's normal. And by, we use normal because it's normal for them. What is their traditional way of, doing these kind of things.
Yeah, for sure.
So what else is there to share about the litter box? What else can we say with people about looking in the litter box? Like, what do you do when you find a good poop?
Well, I mean, I work from home, so I clean the tray multiple times a day. I remember once, I think it was the kitten lady, or maybe Jackson Galaxy, one of them, that said something about, think of your cat's litter box kind of like a like an outhouse or I can't think of the word I want. Like a porta potty. Do you guys have porta potties?
We have portaloos, yes.
Okay, yes. Okay, right. And like, we've all used those, and some have been nicer than others, right? Because there's no flusher. You can't flush it away. So it's like stinky, right? And so they sort of likened a litter box to like a porta potty. And so like, how would you like that? Right. And a cat's nose is like significantly more sensitive to ours. So if they're walking in a litter box and it hasn't been scooped in a while, however long, right, we're talking, but it's going to be super unappealing for them, right? Like that's not where they would choose to go, what they would like. It adds a layer of stress for them that like we might not think about it as stress, but that is stressful for them. And so I think being really, I don't want to say obsessional, but
Religious?
right, but being on top of keeping that litter box clean, I think can help reduce stress for your cat, right? Going to the bathroom for a cat that is also a prey animal is sort of a vulnerable moment, right? In like they're vulnerable to being attacked if they're pooping or peeing something. And so wanting to keep that as stress-free as possible. And I think a big part of that we can do is keep it clean for them. And so there was something about that analogy for me about the porta potty where it like really clicked in my head of like, oh yeah, right. Yeah, I wouldn't want to walk into one that was all creepy and nasty. You want to be one of the first people to use the porta potty, not one of the last.
And that's, again, it's a good point. So that you might have, you know, the rule with litter trays, one per cat plus a spare, at least, I would say, at least. You know, I mean, I'll be honest, we have two in this house because, so I don't have a third because my boys go outside. There are some people whose cats go outside and they don't have any litter trays. Now, I won't be in that situation because you never know. God forbid, if something happened outside to my boys that they weren't safe or comfortable, I would want them to know that they could come in and would have a litter tray. So we've got one covered and one uncovered because Leo likes it uncovered because he needs to look around because he's a bit more sensitive, a bit more fragile because he was feral. Baby Max, you know, it's almost like he has fun. So he goes into the cave and just, you know, has a rocking time. And it's brilliant. When we had Baby Max, you could tell when he needed a wee or a poo because he would go absolutely batshit crazy. He would be running up and down the room and it's almost like he got the wind of I don't know what up him. Like it was almost like, you know, oh my God, I'm gonna poop. And he'd be running, I'm like, he's away. And then before you know it, we'd be playing and then he'd go straight into there, bit of a scrabble around. And you could almost feel the like, you know, and then he'd come out and he'd have this bit of swagger and this obviously poofy tail.
He's like, I'm feeling good now.
And it's funny because when he comes in occasionally, I'm like, you've just had a poo because he comes in and he's just a bit like crazy. So with the litter trays, I digress, but with the litter trays, you know, we do have them even though the boys go outside because again, if there was any signs of them being poorly or uncomfortable, they might want to come into the house where they feel ultimately safe. So I always say to people, even if you've got cats that are outdoor, you know, that go outdoors a lot of the time, at least a litter tray, you know, if not a couple, because you just don't know, you know, you need to provide a resource for them. And like you said, you know, the cleanliness of it is important. So you may have some cats that will wee in one litter tray and poo in another. And that could be to do with placement. That could be to do with litter tray type. So, you know, some cats are very, very fastidious and will only go to the litter box if it's clean. They will only do a wee in a certain box if it's the first wee or the first poo in a different box. And if that even slightly changes, if you change the, you know, the cover or the litter type, you may have a cat that is then, you know, having issues and doing it around the house because they can be really receptive to change. And I don't mean that in a kind of like, it's always a positive way. Cats are very, I don't want to say sensitive, but I do believe cats are sensitive, but when it comes to litter tray habits, I think they're very particular. You know, you have some cats that will be laid back and aloof and like, you know, I'll just go wherever the litter tray is.
No problem.
But a large portion of cats will be very particular about, like you said, how they do their business, where they do their business, and what the conditions are of that place.
Of it, right? Well, and I think the placement of the boxes makes a really big difference, right? Like if you you'd ideally want it in a place that's kind of calm and quiet, right? You don't want it in like a main thoroughfare of your house or an area where like if you have young children and they're kind of, you know, this is where they play in boisterous ways or whatever, that is not going to be an environment conducive for your cat to go to the bathroom. So thinking about placement, you know, it should be quiet, but also they shouldn't feel trapped, right? So you always have like different things like, oh, you don't want them to feel trapped either. And like you said, some cats like a covered box, some do not. I think most litter boxes, at least here in the US, are really actually too small for most cats.
I
Like,
completely agree.
right, they're so tiny, and so they should be able to turn around comfortably, right? Because typically they dig around, they find their spot, they do their business, then they turn around, they got to look at it, inspect it, cover it. There's like a whole process there, right?
Oh yeah.
And so they have to be able to sort of move freely about that. So I think the biggest box you can get is always best, no matter the size of your cat.
Yeah.
I've used like big Rubbermaid totes before for boxes, and then I'll cut a little doorway in.
Oh, like storage boxes, do you mean?
Yes, like a storage box. Yes.
Okay, yeah.
I've done that. Right now I have a stainless steel box that I really like. Then it has a plastic topper that goes on, because some cats, they're high peers, right? They like really arch their little back end up and they pee on the wall, as opposed to like squatting down in the litter. And so we have one of our cats who's more of like a high peer, and so it's nice to have it a tall enough box to prevent that from going all over the place.
That's a really interesting point. And some people have said to me before that the cat spray. I'm like, no. Some cats will crookie to pee. Some cats will stand up straight and tail up to pee.
Yes.
And it depends on the individual cat. So like you said, it's catering the litter tray to their needs. So baby Max, when we first got him, I gave him an open litter tray because that's what we had for Leo. We had some left over from when we had Leo. We had a spare one left over from when we had Pickle. So we had an open, rectangle litter tray.
Yeah.
And first day he used it, it was fine. Second day, I went to pick up his little carrier because we were doing, behavior training in and out of the carrier. And I was like, oh no. And it was wet. And I was like, oh, baby Max.
In the carrier.
And he'd weed, right? I thought it was just a one-off. So I was like, oh, buddy, were you scared in the night, or like what had happened?
Right.
Didn't think anything else of it. The next day that I cleaned it all out, put fresh bedding in. The next day that I was in the room with him, because I was going in, to spend a lot of time with him. And he did the whole crazy thing. Yeah. I was like, here it comes. And he ran straight into his carrier and did it again, did a wee and a poo. And I was like, right, I hear you. So I went straight to the shop, straight to the shop. Yeah, straight to the shop. And I didn't have a car at the time. So I said to my dad, can we please go to Pets at Home today? I've got to buy a covered litter tray. By the time I order it on Amazon, and I need to get one today. Came home, like you said, I got the biggest. Bear in mind, baby Max was like a tiny ball of fluff. The biggest I could get. And he was like, it's a sandbox. It's great. Because baby Max is a digger.
Digger.
And he
like
he sprays it all up behind. You're saying like your cat with the high wheeze. But we've got one with a high back because baby Max is like having a sandcastle fight with a demon behind him.
Yes.
So we put the covered litter tray in there, and I actually kept both. We had the open one and the covered one.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because he never went to the open one again. Not once.
Right. That
Not
was it.
once. And I was like,
isn't that interesting?
Baby Max.
Yeah.
But it's funny because I mentioned about the rescue center, because that was the one question. You can imagine me getting a new kitten from a rescue center, 20 questions galore. The one question I didn't actually ask was what litter tray is he currently using?
Yeah.
I didn't even think to ask that. And if I had, I'd have known, right? That's obviously what they had there.
Yeah. No, it's so interesting, right? The physical box itself, the size, tall, low, but also the litter can really you have to do kind of a transition with litter in the same way that you do food if you're going to move to a different kind of litter, because you can't just switch it on them, because they'll be like, what is this? This is not right. So it's like, I'm going to put a quarter of new litter with 3/4 of the old litter and do kind of a gradual switch to something different and new.
Because the thing with litter, there's the texture, there's the feel, obviously there's the scent, any scent molecules, as in like of the substrate. And one thing I really am against is scented litter. So litter tray liners, scented litter, and this kind of brings us full This brings us full circle, because when people have said and companies have reached out to me to say, come and endorse our product, I don't do that. And I'm like, no, not for scented. And I reply to every single one and say, there is no need for scented litter when you're feeding a species appropriate diet. So even if you've got a cat that's got a health issue, right? Because obviously there are some exceptions to like the rule, but there are ways to support your cat with that. Scented litter can be a huge deterrent for cats.
Yeah.
So imagine, like you said, if you went to go and use, imagine if you went to go and use that porta potty and you walked in and it smells like a really like pungent oaky aftershave or something. You'd be like, I can't wee here. Like, no, right?
Yeah.
Or you'd run straight out and hopefully not have an accident. But that's why cats may not be using the litter tray. If you've got a scented litter, and in the UK, I don't know if you guys have this there, but some people will put newspaper, then put a scented liner, and then put like really bare litter. And so the cat is like basically scrabbling on the plastic liner.
Yeah.
Do you guys have that?
I mean, there are like litter tray liners that are plastic like that, but which I hate too, right? Like I'm not sure what the purpose is exactly, but yeah, no, but I haven't heard that kind of setup. But I think you bring up a really good point that you do have to make sure to have enough litter in the tray. Like, and like some cats are more dig oriented than others, like Baby Max sounds like he loves a good dig. But really it is their natural behavior to dig at least some, you know, poop or pee and then cover it some. And if they don't have enough material, substrate to do that with, that again can just cause some stress because they can't engage in their natural behavior around pooping and peeing. So yeah, you don't want to skimp out on how much litter you got in that tray.
No, that is a great point. I never forget once we picked Leo up from the vets, and I'd seen the place that he was in, and there were like granules in the bottom of the tray, and I was like, I appreciate, you're trying to sort of save money and what have you, but like you said, there are natural behaviors there, and it's for things like this, the size, the location, the substrate of the litter tray, they're really easy wins. Right, those are the things that you can do to help your cat to thrive, right? It may seem like it's really simple, but actually these are things you can do to help your cat to thrive. So the litter tray placement, it might not be like you said, you don't want it in a high traffic area. It may not also be a good idea to put it under like the cupboard under the stairs, right? Is your cat comfortable using that space? And so the litter tray, think about how your toilet is, peeps. You go there, it's hopefully clean, you've got toilet roll, maybe an air freshener, you've got a space you can shut the door. It fulfills your need as a human, and what we're talking about tonight is about cats. It's not about what we need, it's not about where we want the litter tray to be, it's about how can the cat get to the litter tray, how can they bring in all of these beautiful natural behaviors that help them to thrive. Because when you've got a cat that can exhibit normal cat behaviors, they're going to have good mental health, and good emotional health, which is going to help with their energetic health. I can't help but not bring it energetic health.
Of course. No, right, but it is all connected. I mean, if we think about, we're bringing this little wild animal now, like, okay, they've been domesticated, right? But still who they are, right? And we're bringing them into our homes, and it really is our responsibility to make sure we're providing for their needs. And I think, like you said, these are easy wins. This is easy, right? Like, have an appropriate box, make sure there's enough litter and a substrate that works for them. And it's an easy way to make your cat happy, and to just keep their stress level down, and to provide for their needs. And that's our responsibility when we bring them in our homes. And there's just no getting around it.
For sure,
something we have to do.
If you decide to be a cat guardian, that's the role you take on, right?
Exactly.
I just look at Heidi's comment. Widget part drug Russell always comes in from the garden with mud up to his hocks.
Oh, that's too funny.
I love that. That is brilliant, great. Heidi. And I have to say, when Baby Max, when you said hocks, we call them his bloomers. So Baby Max, the back of his legs, they're all so like really fluffy and long haired. So generally, when he comes home, I'm like yesterday, there were 3 dead leaves in amongst his bloomers. I'm like, oh, buddy, you're just being for a poo.
Right.
It was all around his butt.
Yes, all the stuff with him. Yes.
Love him. I really much prefer live flowers, but thanks for the dead leaves.
Oh, that's funny.
Okay, so we're almost at time, my love. So what would be your closing thought or your parting words of wisdom for people about looking in the litter tray?
Well, I feel like we've covered a lot of ground with the litter tray, right? And so It's hard to summarize sort of in a parting thought, but I think part of it is you're just gonna have to get comfortable with poop and pee, right? Like, you're just get good with it, embrace it, become a poo lover like Julianne and I, like, and I ultimately think a really important a thing that we've brought up is like knowing your individual cat. Like, it really becomes important. Know your cat's quote unquote normal. How often, what does it look like? So that when you do make a dietary change, and then you can know, like, oh, that's why their poop's a little looser today, right? Or if you haven't changed anything, but you're noticing some differences, be like, okay, what might be going on here? Does this warrant a vet visit or not? Like, or, you know, what might this be telling me? It's an important, it's almost like the litter box is really an important hub of communication between you and your cat. Right? Like, this is how their body is sort of letting you know, communicating, this is how the diet is impacting me. This is my state of health, how things are going for me. And we don't want to miss those signs. We don't want to miss them. And so I guess maybe that might be kind of like my part, like, pay attention. It's really important. You don't want to overlook it, and know your cat's normal so that when it's off, you can make an appropriate decision of what needs to happen for your cat.
Yeah, beautiful. I love that. The litter box is the hub of communication. I think that's really interesting. And just before we wrap us up, the one thing we didn't get around to saying, which I'm going to just bring in, is about parasites. So when you're looking at poop, you know, what I always used to do was to get a big bit of kitchen roll when I picked up the poop. You know, obviously make sure your health and safety protected peeps, don't just pick it up with your bare hands. I would squash it or pull it apart, you know, because you can see if there's any parts of worms, you know, you can check for parasites. So, you know, that's why actually when you're dealing with Hazel's poop, what do you do with it? I always used to give it a bit of a squidge. I'd always pull it apart, have a look to see what was inside. You know, I could see if there was a lot of hair, if there was a lot of fur, you know. So I just wanted to bring that in about parasites. So, you know, if you do see something alive, dead or otherwise in your poop, obviously, like we've said, please go and see that. And if you can, and if you can, this is going to sound super gross, but if you can, bag up that poop, you know, put it in a pot, a jar, a container that you can ditch, you know, plastic bag, you know, take it with you so that you can show it to the vet. Because when you go to see them, data, facts, information is really going to help them when it comes to them treating your cats.
For sure. I will add something a little even grosser to that, is that you'll want to take that poop sample and keep it in the fridge until you get to the vet.
Good point.
Which is, you know, kind of ew to think about, but if it's
it's going to be in a container,
this is what it is, right? Like, just something we got to deal with. So
no, that's a really good point. Thanks for that. And on that note, with poop in your fridge,
now we've really taken it to another level with poop today.
Oh, I love it. Okay, so we are back next month on October. No, that's not right. I've just missed a whole month there. On
September.
Yes, we're back on the 27th of September, peeps. And let me just double check what we're talking about. Hang on.
I don't know if we decided what we were talking about for September.
Oh, did we not?
No, I don't think we had set these two up, but I don't think we went further than that.
We did, you know, we've got September and October done.
Oh, do we?
Yeah.
And we already know what we're talking about?
Yeah.
So maybe I just don't know what we're talking about.
I may have just decided this when you gave me the list of things to talk about, and I just haven't managed to share with you yet.
Well, what are we talking? Then you'll have to tell me too. What are we talking about in September? It's so funny.
So September, we've got the importance of variety and rotation.
Oh, beautiful. It's one of my most favorite things to talk about besides poop. So this will be awesome.
Perfect. And Heidi, sorry about turning you off your glass of Sav, my love. I hope you can feel the love for the wine again after we've finished. Well, thank you for joining us, Heidi. It's been lovely to have you here, my darling. And thank you to everybody else that's been with us live. I hope you've enjoyed it. Kristen says, sorry, I missed most of it. We'll need to listen back. No worries, my love. You can catch it on replay on Facebook and YouTube. Thank you to Jennifer from the Raw Fed Feline. It's been lovely to be with you again. And we will see you all next month.
You as well.
All right, my darling. Thanks, everyone. Bye for now. Bye.